I'm Player.
I'm Versus.
And I'm Player. And together, we're PvP.
Oh, right.
We're the reason for all your favorite gaming memories. You remember playing GoldenEye in your basement with your older brother and he knew all the cheats so he kept killing you and you couldn't get a single kill in, but you still loved it because you were 5 and you didn't know any better? Yeah, that's thanks to PvP.
Radical.
Or what about rushing home from school to play Modern Warfare 2 with all your friends? Don't you love that? That's because of PvP, baby. Or maybe you like getting those sweet victory royales on Fortnite with your homies. That's because of PvP. I'm sorry. We're PvP and we make gaming better.
And I'm MMORPGs. Where did everyone go? You can probably hear that I'm pretty sick right now. I'm sick of PvP in my MMORPGs. Sick. No, but actually.
PvP games are some of the most popular games in the entire world. Think of games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, Battlefront 2. No, not this new one from EA. I'm talking about the good the one from back in the day when things were good and war didn't exist, I assume. I was a child, so I don't think it existed. For over 3 decades of gaming, PvP has been one of the biggest parts of gaming. But for MMORPGs, it's been a little different. Back in the early days of MMORPGs, PvP was a huge part of the game. It was the counterpart to PvE, or player versus environment. It was the 2 main ways people played the MMORPG. But over the past few years, PvP has started to fall more and more by the wayside, despite efforts from developers and players to keep it alive. PvP in theory makes a lot of sense for MMORPGs. It's a chance to test your skills and builds that you spent hundreds of hours investing in against other players, the toughest competition you'll ever face. I mean, let's face it, boss mechanics can be pretty difficult, but it's a little bit hard to replicate the most dangerous game there is. Man, player versus player combat just offers a unique experience that is impossible to replicate in any other way. But I just think its time of having a place in MMORPGs is coming to an inevitable end. But why? I hear you asking through tears, you little baby boy. Well, that's what the video is about.
But first I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Southern New Hampshire University. They... Who are you? Have you ever considered how your life would have turned out if you never got a higher education? Well, I make YouTube videos for a living, so it probably wouldn't be that different. I forgot how foolish the version of me from this timeline was. Wait, are you saying you found a way to hop between timelines with extreme precision and no adverse effects at all? Precisely. Wait, you picked up on that really fast. Probably my higher education. Yes. An education that I never received. A decision that had a domino effect leading to a series of events that can only be described as cataclysmic in nature. A series of events that left me looking like this. Oh my god, I have hair in your timeline? Yeah, but like, I'm dead. Yeah? Are you saying you'd rather be dead than bald? I don't know. Oh my god, you're dumb. What I'm trying to say is that an affordable online university could have allowed me to reach my full potential. Oh, like SNHU's game dev program that teaches students everything they need to know about making games, from basic programming to 3D modeling and texturing. Yes, that's a good example. It's also great because they have a huge selection of accredited online degree programs, so you can really learn anything there, and it's also one of the most affordable online schools in the country, literally one of the lowest tuition rates there is. Right, like I said, that's a good example. You want to learn more? I already know how to jump between timelines. I don't need... If you go to snhu.edu/idle or click the link in the description, that goes for you too, by the way, then you can learn more by finding out the average salary for a programmer, or even if you have more specific questions, talking to a real person. Okay, it seems like you have things covered here. I'm gonna go now. Bye. Huh, he was nice. What was I saying?
To figure out why PvP is starting to fall by the wayside, I think we need to look at what makes PvP a fun part of MMORPGs. So I'd like to introduce you to the 3 R's of PvP. They're the pillars of what makes PvP fun. Let's start with the first R, reward. Obviously, for content to feel like it's worth doing, there should probably be a reward for it. Do you think players would do quests if there weren't quest rewards, even if it's as little as experience? Probably not. Quests suck. So to get people to engage with PvP, you gotta give them a good reward. PvP rewards can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. It can be something like the player you killed dropping all or some of their loot for you to pick up, or it could be making progress towards certain PvP specific reward shops, like in World of Warcraft. Or the game could do something wild, like having the players drop specific items that have a hard-coded price when sold to an NPC that can be abused by millions of players and bots alike to basically throw the economy into shambles. That's what RuneScape did, and this was never a good idea. The second R is risk. PvP is fun because it's dangerous. If there's no risk and you're just gonna be stomping on every single person you come across, it's not gonna be as fun. Now I hear you undead rogues in World of Warcraft open world PvP who like to corpse camp level 20 players while you're level 60 and have nothing better to do with your lives, but for the most part, players do enjoy feeling like at any moment they could be caught off guard just as much as they're catching other players off guard. Risk could be hand in hand with the reward. If you drop all your loot on death, then yeah, that's a risk. But it can come in a lot of different forms too. If there's a PvP minigame, dying could cause you to lose an objective of that minigame, or it could cause you to lose points towards that reward shop we talked about earlier. Risk and reward are very intertwined, and it's important that they work together to create an engaging and compelling experience. And finally, the third R of PvP is skill. The R is silent. Shut up. What separates PvP from PvE, in my opinion, is the skill required to master it. This isn't to say that PvE is easy, but there's nothing that matches the skill required when another person can predict and react to your moves extremely quickly. I mean, I guess one day we'll have like ChatGPT built into our NPC so they can actually predict what our next move is going to be, but until that point, PvP, in my opinion, is the mountaintop of skill. So with these three pillars of PvP established, how can we balance them to make PvP fun and worth engaging with? Well, the truth is, you kind of can't. And that's because of a secret fourth R that I didn't tell you about. Accessibility. There's no R in this one, I just lied to you about that. Accessibility is what makes PvP so difficult in MMORPGs, and it's a problem that other PvP-centric games don't have to worry about. The thing that's required to make PvP popular in an MMORPG is a low barrier to entry, so you can have players participating in PvP. And the reason PvP was so popular back in the day, like 2004 to 2010, is because honestly, players didn't know any better. This is a video clip of a PvPer named Elfmage from RuneScape way back in the day, around 2006, and he was considered at the time unbeatable. To be honest, and I don't say this lightly, I could probably kick Elfmage's ass these days. And that's because on average, not only have we learned more about these games and how to build our characters well, but the average gamer has just gotten better. Don't believe me? Look at what 12-year-olds are doing in Fortnite. I can't even wrap my head around this, and they just do it for fun? This doesn't look fun. This looks miserable. In reality, I would stand no chance of kicking a 12-year-old's ass these days. As much as I might want to.
By the way, that Fortnite video was from a YouTuber named Dims, and I just want to say that I did like the video because I do hate school.
These days, if you want to participate in PvP and stand a reasonable chance, you have to watch some YouTube tutorials, invest a lot of time into your character making sure it's built the right way. In 2007 in RuneScape, if you just went to Edgeville in whatever gear you had on you, you would stand a decent chance of getting a kill or two. This fact holds true for every MMO from 2 decades ago. I mean, just look at what open world PvP looked like in World of Warcraft back in 2004. This is not what it looks like today. People are doing insane combos now. These people were just messing around, having fun in an MMORPG. How dare they? The reality of the situation is there's a lot more people like me than there are people who are good at PvP playing MMORPGs. That's not to say that people can't get into PvP as new players these days, but it just requires a time investment that can be daunting to most people. So keeping this barrier to entry in mind, how do we balance these pillars to try and keep PvP accessible while making it good? Okay, so obviously you're gonna wanna minimize the risk so that players don't feel like they're going to lose everything they've worked for by trying to learn PvP, but you also want good reward, so we're gonna bump that reward up. Well, I guess we could do some sort of skill-based matchmaking so that skill is always balanced, but then how do we do that in open world PvP, which people really love? And it doesn't even make sense to have rewards so high if the risk is so low. That defeats the point of PvP. So balancing this is obviously really goddamn hard, especially when you take into account open world PvP, which is the mainstay of MMORPGs. In case you don't know what I mean by open world PvP, that's just the concept of being able to fight other players in the world of the MMO without having to enter into combat or go into a separate instance. It's just PvP in the flow of the game. Examples of open world PvP are the wilderness in old school RuneScape, or contested zones in World of Warcraft. Once you enter those zones, you're fair game to be killed, even if you're just trying to kill some monsters there for their loot. The difficulty with making open world PvP fair and fun is a big reason why a lot of MMOs don't just do open world PvP. So you know what we have to do, friends. We've got to look at every single PvP game mode there is. Over the decades-long history of MMOs, we've seen tons of PvP game modes introduced to try and make PvP accessible to every player, including the players whose greatest accomplishment is killing the level 11 walking pigman in the starting zone. By far the most popular of these game modes has been the Battleground. The Battleground typically consists of two groups of players competing to complete an objective in an instanced area. A good example of this is Castle Wars in RuneScape, which is a capture the flag minigame with two teams who can kill each other freely. Or Arathi Basin in World of Warcraft, which requires players to capture objectives and hold them for enough time to win the game. Battlegrounds are trying to emulate the Call of Duty style game modes that were so popular in the late 2000s and early 2010s. The interesting thing about Battlegrounds is that killing other players isn't really the point. Killing other players is just a means to an end to complete whatever the objective of that game mode is. And because these games are in instanced areas, it's extremely accessible because of the complete lack of risk. Dying in these game modes usually comes with little to no penalty outside of the game mode. The only point is to try and win and make progress towards whatever the rewards for it are. The issue with Battlegrounds comes from the fact that it's kind of an unfortunate compromise between PvP and PvE. For PvP players, it's not really a test of skill that might scratch that PvP itch they really want, especially when considering that, again, killing other players isn't really the objective. And for PvE players who might just want to grind the rewards from the reward shop, it might have too much PvP, making it something that they're annoyed that they have to do. Another problem with the rewards being too good is, like any other part of an MMO, the fun has been optimized away. If you're an individual player trying to queue up for Warsong Gulch in World of Warcraft, good luck winning a game. The meta for these Battlegrounds has become forming 10-man pre-made groups that are optimally built. That means having the right amount and right kind of DPS, enough healers to sustain you, some tanks to draw aggro. So if you're in a group of a bunch of individuals who are just looking for a game, you're going to get killed. You don't stand a chance. And it actually made a lot of sense back in the early 2000s when people would just do these things for fun. I mean, I loved playing Castle Wars as a kid when I didn't even know there was a reward shop. Turns out there is. Look at this armor you can get from there. That's so ugly. Why did you do this, Jagex? That's why I personally think that Battlegrounds aren't really a great example of good PvP. They're a lot of fun, and if you can get a group together to go try out some Battlegrounds, you'll have a great time with your friends. But in terms of just being an actual part of the PvP ecosystem, I think they kind of fall flat. The truth is, I think a lot of game designers have realized this issue with Battlegrounds, so they turn their attention to something else.
Battle Royale. We're doing title parts now.
Remember how I said Battlegrounds were an attempt to capture what Call of Duty was doing in the late 2000s and early 2010s? Well, Battle Royales are trying to capture what Fortnite has been doing for the last 6 years extremely successfely. Can I be honest with you guys for a second? The best part is I wrote this video over a month ago, and now that I'm recording it, Blizzard just announced a Battle Royale for World of Warcraft. I mean, I'm a genius. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a Battle Royale game mode is where you fight against a bunch of other players to be the last one standing. You'll start on a big map that over time will shrink, forcing players to get closer together until you eventually have a duel to the death to be the winner. Like I've already said, Fortnite is an example of an extremely popular Battle Royale game, but Warzone and Apex, which are also massively popular in their own right, are Battle Royales as well. Unlike Battlegrounds, player versus player combat is the point of these game modes, so it really satisfies that itch of the best one wins. That means PvPers who want high skill combat will be satisfied with this. So how does a Battle Royale work in an MMORPG? Well, the old school RuneScape dev team a while ago released Last Man Standing, their attempt at making a Battle Royale. Last Man Standing really follows all of the Battle Royale tropes. You start on a big map, it gets smaller, last one standing wins. Around the map, you will find loot crates that will contain better weapons and armor, and killing players will also allow you to open these chests that will give you better weapons. Basically, the more kills you get throughout, the stronger you'll be at the end. But it's important to keep in mind that Last Man Standing doesn't throw your existing character into the battle. Instead, every player is given the exact same stats and a generally balanced loadout that you can customize in minor ways. So inside Last Man Standing, you're not playing your character, you're playing a stand-in character to allow the playing field to be fair. This is good because it means that skill is truly the determining factor. Did you choose the right loadout? Are you just better than the person you're fighting right now? It's all based on your personal ability to overcome. I do think that this still has two problems though. The first is that what sets MMORPGs PvP systems apart is that it's about the character you spent time building and optimizing, and when you replace that character with a stand-in, you lose that connection, and I think that's a shame, but it is kind of a necessary evil for this game mode to work. The other issue is that, like I said before, the skill level of the average PvPer is so high that new players entering Last Man Standing basically don't stand a chance of getting a kill. For the most part, if you're a first-time Last Man Standing player, you'll keep running games until you run into someone who is AFK enough that you can just kill them for free. And then what you'll do is you'll hide until the end of the game when you inevitably get killed by one of the best players. Now this might sound stupid, but it's actually rewarded. The longer you last in Last Man Standing, the more points you get. Now getting a lot of kills will get you significantly more points than just hiding, but hiding will still result in more points than just dying right away. So because people want the rewards from this game mode, they'll often play a bit counterintuitively in a way that's not fun for anyone. Last Man Standing, and I assume World of Warcraft's Plunderstorm, do a good job of raising that accessibility, making it so anyone can really try their hand at PvP. But there's still the issue that PvP is just really, really hard to learn, and trying to force people to learn it by tempting them with rewards doesn't work all of the time, and it can often lead to just frustration.
Hey, it's Future Idol here telling you that you don't need to write that comment about skill-based matchmaking being the solution to this issue. The truth is, most MMOs don't have big enough populations to make skill-based matchmaking work when you consider that there needs to be enough people trying to play whatever PvP minigame there is at that exact moment in time. And therefore, I don't think it's a realistic solution. Okay, thank you, back to the video.
A common response to this notion from the PvP community will be, LOL, get good. But unfortunately, a lot of players just don't feel like participating in a part of the game they don't enjoy. So they don't want to get good. So the question becomes, how do we keep that test of skill in place while making your build matter and making it something that everyone can participate in? Well, to do that, we have to go to something that was started all the way back in 1997.
Open world PvP. I don't really feel like doing title cards anymore.
I've already talked a lot about open world PvP in this video, but it's worth talking about in detail because it is the main form of PvP that people want and that MMOs can deliver that other games can't. Plus, open world PvP has been a staple of MMOs since the very first MMORPGs. Ultima Online had an open world PvP system that was core to the way the game functioned. I've already talked about World of Warcraft's PvP system using zones that were owned by either the Horde or the Alliance or were contested, which were just open PvP, as long as you were on PvP servers, that is. RuneScape back in 2001 when it released used to have two options when you create your character, a PvPer or a skiller. If you were a PvPer, you would fight anywhere in the world. Eventually PvP was moved up to the wilderness, but when you're in the wilderness, which is a sizable part of the map, you're fair game. Open world PvP has been far and away the most popular form of PvP implemented in MMOs, old and new, and it's even been the backbone of an entire genre of MMORPGs. A genre that is admittedly very bad. We'll talk about that later. On paper, it makes a lot of sense of why open world PvP would be so popular. If we look at our three pillars and ignore accessibility, then it does a great job with all three. It has a high level of risk depending on how you want to implement your open world PvP system. The reward is also usually very high in the form of either building up reputation or getting the player you killed loot. And the skill, of course, is extremely high because you are literally facing off against other players. I'll be real with you, I don't really participate in PvP, but I'd be lying to you if I said that when I came across a low hit point Horde player who was about to finish off an elite quest mob, I didn't have a whole lot of fun killing them and ruining their quest. This is truly evidence that you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. Or you were never a hero and you're just kind of an average dude. On the flip side of that though, nothing makes me want to act like the kid who shoved a remote up his ass more than getting corpse camped by an undead rogue who has nothing better to do than to kill someone who's literally 30 levels beneath him. Like, just go do something else, go raid, you're max level, what are you doing? Log off, I don't care. Over the years though, open world PvP has started to fall by the wayside because it does a lot more punishing players who don't want to participate in PvP than it does rewarding the players who do. I already mentioned RuneScape shoving all PvP up into the wilderness, and there was even a point from 2007 to 2011 where they removed PvP from the wilderness altogether. World of Warcraft removed PvP servers and instead made PvP an opt-in option. That means if you didn't want to opt in, you were safe to go wherever you wanted. There's even new MMOs like New World that was developed with PvP as a focus, but when they realized that was going to be too niche, they shifted to trying to be more of a PvP-PvE hybrid, which kind of ended up being the worst of both worlds. As fun as open world PvP can be, it just falls flat in too many aspects. To be a serious player in open world PvP, you usually have to be max level. That's a whole lot of time you have to invest just to start PvPing. And for the vast majority of games, usually the risk does outweigh the reward with open world PvP. It's just not worth risking what you're carrying or risking your time just to try and kill another player when you could just continue with your quest and probably make out with more money than you would if you died or even got the kill. There have been attempts to revive this form of PvP in recent years, especially by games like old school RuneScape, doing things like level bracketing in the open world so that you're not just getting stomped by the highest level players, or by tempting players to go out into these dangerous PvP areas by having high value monsters to kill or important boss drops there. The idea behind this, I think, is to get players to think more like a PvPer and to make the whole concept less scary. But for the most part, it just makes players not want to go out there after they get killed once or twice. They just feel like, this isn't worth my time, I only have a certain amount of hours a week to play these games, I don't want to spend it running back to my corpse all the time. And let's be honest for PvPers too. Do they get a lot of satisfaction of killing someone who doesn't even fight back when they start fighting? I feel like they would want a more challenging experience too. But I don't really know. I'm not a PvPer, despite my bald head. But again, open world PvP is by far the most popular version of PvP that MMORPGs have to offer. And that's why there's an entire subgenre based around open world PvP that is supposed to make everyone a PvPer. And that's the hardcore full loot MMO. Hardcore full loot MMOs are exactly what they sound like. The entire world is PvP, if you die you drop all your loot, and the other player gets it, and that's kind of the concept, that's kind of it. The most popular examples of hardcore full loot MMOs are Mortal Online and Mortal Online 2. These games are sandboxes in the truest sense. There's no quests, the economy is completely player-driven, factions are player-driven, and it really is supposed to emulate kind of a real world. It's the kind of idea that you put down on paper and you're like, this is really good, this is gonna be a lot of fun and people are gonna organize and it's gonna be great, but in reality, it's just the worst. I personally played Mortal Online 2 and I hated it. I know some people like it, but they're the minority. The thing about hardcore full loot MMOs is they often go against the philosophy of MMOs entirely. You know how you're supposed to spend time investing in progressing your character and getting all the best items so that you can stand a chance against either harder bosses or in PvP if that's your thing? Well, in hardcore full loot MMOs, you'll probably spend more time rebuilding your character to where you had just been. It's really, really frustrating. It makes it feel like you're making no progress ever, like you're running in place. You could also look at existing MMOs that did hardcore full loot game modes. Deadman mode from old school RuneScape and Darkscape from RuneScape 3, which came out about 10 years ago now, are just bad. In Deadman mode, you actually not only lose what you're wearing, you also lose the 10 most valuable items from your bank. And you also lose half of your experience, meaning all those skills you spend time grinding, yeah, you lose a bunch of that too. So you're set back massively. They've tried over the years to offset this by having immunity periods, or having skills you could lock so that you wouldn't lose XP in them, or having safety deposit boxes so you wouldn't lose certain items you didn't want to lose. But playing an MMO with this paranoid, schizophrenic mindset isn't fun. It's counterintuitive to the way people typically like to play MMOs. There's a reason these game modes are dead. Darkscape shut down really not long after launch, and the permanent Deadman mode worlds on RuneScape are the most dead servers there are. Not even PvPers enjoy them. The other issue with hardcore full loot MMOs is, like I said, Factions will be completely player run. That's true in Deadman mode and Mortal Online too. So if you want to come in as a solo player, you're basically entering a gang war and both gangs really want to kill you. People in Deadman mode used to call it Clan Man mode because if you weren't aligned with the clan, you were not allowed to go anywhere. You were going to die instantly because all the important areas were camped. I don't get why no one wants to play this. It sounds so fun. Oh my god, this is so appealing. Old school RuneScape has had seasonal Deadman modes that have had some measure of success, but the main draw for those isn't even the hardcore full loot aspect of it. It's everything else. In the last one, which was by far the most popular, they just introduced breaches like in Path of Exile. It was great, but it wasn't PvP. True full loot hardcore MMOs go against being what an MMORPG is. And honestly, it kind of goes against being what an RPG is. So it's not even an MMORPG. It's not even an MMO. It's not even an RPG. It's a... Do you want to play with me? So those are the main ways that PvP is implemented into an MMORPG. I'm not including things like duels because those are like truly opt-in side quests to PvP in reality, and they can genuinely be a lot of fun. But with all these game modes that try and be serious PvP and try to have a place next to PvE in an MMORPG, they just have too many issues. So where does that leave us? I spent this whole video talking about the issues with PvP and how it just doesn't fit in with MMORPGs as it stands right now. But what about the future? Do I think that there is a way to make PvP fit? Not really. I'm really not trying to be a dick here against people's favorite way to play an MMORPG. I am not rooting for PvP to go away. I just think that the way that MMORPGs are trending and the way that the majority of player bases interact with MMOs just doesn't allow for PvPs to be what they want to be. It's no secret that over the lifespan of an MMO, they get more and more complex. There's more items introduced, more abilities introduced, new boss mechanics introduced. And balancing all of that stuff is hard enough. But when you consider you have to balance them not only for PvE, but PvP, it gets twice as complicated. I mean, think about it. An ability that is meant to be really strong in PvE might be overpowered to an unreasonable degree in PvP. So what's the solution that these devs go for? They have it behave differently against players. World of Warcraft has done this since its release, and old school RuneScape has started doing it a lot more frequently. The most egregious example is a weapon called the blowpipe. It attacks exceptionally fast, every 2 ticks, the second fastest any weapon can be. But that's so overpowered in player versus player combat that it just goes to 3 ticks. The weapon literally becomes 50% slower based on who you're attacking. And for a new player, imagine trying to wrap your head around that. MMOs are complicated, and having 2 different ways that they work with no explanation in the same game is mind-blowing, and it just isn't appealing to new players. That barrier to entry keeps getting higher the more MMOs evolve, because they evolve with PvE in mind, and PvP will become unbalanced, and it'll become different, and it'll become a whole new game that most players don't want to participate in, and it doesn't make sense. These battleground game modes and battle royales are great. I think they have a place in these games, but they're not the kind of PvP that players fell in love with, and that's because that kind of PvP I don't think is coming back. It's no secret that I'm a huge old school RuneScape player, and over the past 10 years I have watched Jagex try and fail to make PvP a real part of old school RuneScape. All of their attempts have led to frustration from both PvP and PvE players, and this is after they have spent a considerable amount of time talking to PvPers who are extremely knowledgeable on the subject. And yet here we are, running that same treadmill, going nowhere as we try and figure out how we bring back this game mode that hasn't been popular since 2008. I think people who want true engaging PvP experiences are more suited to playing games that have PvP as a focus. And people who want that PvE experience have more of a home in MMORPGs because that's what they've always been better at delivering. I hope that way smarter game developers than me, because I'm not a game developer, do find a solution. They do find a way to make it rewarding for everyone. I just don't think that's the future, and I think we gotta maybe start looking at not trying to make PvP happen. Well, this feels like kind of a downer of a video, but it is my opinion, and remember, I am the president of MMORPGs, so you're not allowed to disagree with me. But hey, if you would like to leave some mean comments, let me give you some examples of what you could say while a song about my patrons plays. Okay, Baldy, I'll take your opinion when you learn how to grow hair. Hey, stop copying insert YouTuber here. This guy can't grow facial hair. That's true, but it hurts. Hey, bald. Okay,
that's where you're at. You went to the URL in the description and you gave me your money, and that's pretty neat. Hey, you're a patron. Thank you so much for your support. Hey, you're a patron. I like you very much, cause hey, you're a patron. Patreon is where you're at. You went to the URL in the description and you gave me your money, and that's pretty